Good morning and welcome to the KDPG Sunday edition. I'm Stacy Smith. Late Friday afternoon, President Donald Trump announced that an agreement had been reached with congressional leaders to end the partial government shutdown. That agreement came after East Coast airports experienced delays in takeoffs because of staffing problems at two air traffic control facilities where controllers have not been paid. On Friday morning, Congressman Mike Kelly from Pennsylvania's 16th Congressional District talked with us about the government shutdown. We now present that interview.
From the most trusted names in local news, KDPG Sunday Edition.
This morning on the KDPG Sunday Edition, we hope to get a behind-the-scenes look at the political impasse in Washington from a member of the powerful House Ways and Means Committee. Congressman Mike Kelly is a Republican from Pennsylvania's 16th Congressional District, which includes a portion of Butler County and all of Lawrence, Mercer, Erie, and Crawford counties. Sally Stapleton, the managing editor of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, joins us for this morning's discussion. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us again on the KDPG Sunday Edition. It is good to have you back. We should put this caveat out. We are taping this program on Friday morning. By the time it airs at 11:30, when people are watching it on Sunday morning, who knows, miracles could happen and we might have the end of the government shutdown. But having said that, just before we went on air, came word that the FAA halted flights into LaGuardia Airport because of a air traffic control staffing shortage. And of course, it comes one day after the airline executives warned that the shutdown is pushing the U.S. aviation system to a tipping point. Your reaction first to now the staffing problems because of the government shutdown.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see a greater effect as we go through this. You know, missing one paycheck, and some people say, well, you should be able to get through maybe that. Missing two paychecks, and you know, my entire life has been spent in the automobile business, and I know when you sit across from somebody who's buying a car or a truck, you understand what personal finances look like, and you understand paydays are very, very important, especially in today's economy. I don't know that people are able to build up these savings, and we know that 60% of the American people, if they were called upon to come up with $1,000 in cash today, cannot do that. Now, I'm not saying they don't have access to $1,000, but actually having hard cash available to them, 60% of Americans don't have that. The cost of living has gone off the charts, and we know that people are under great strain, and missing paydays is crucial to them. So I want to see this change as quickly as possible. As you know, we voted 3 times since the beginning of this year to actually get payment to TSA workers, Coast Guard, and some of these folks that are in really tough positions with great responsibilities to the American people, and they're not getting paid. That, to me, is inexcusable.
No, there were 3 Republican proposals in the House
yes.
to indeed start paying some federal employees. Did those proposals have an attachment to them about building the wall?
Yeah, well, they all did, because I think, again, you know, my background has been in a business where we negotiate, but I've always thought that negotiations take 2 or more parties that want to get to an end, not a situation where you want to have a stalemate. So it's critical to understand that to get there, you make a proposal and you wait for a counter proposal. You can't negotiate with yourself. That's impossible.
All right, well, let's just cut right to the chase.
Sure.
Because most people are going to sit here and say that why does the president absolutely, and Republicans following the president, absolutely insist that there has to be money for that wall before the government can reopen? The Democrats, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, sit there and they will tell you that we are not putting any money on from the wall until you open the government.
Yeah, and I understand that position, and that's an easy thing to say, but leverage is critical. What I don't understand is up until the time that candidate Trump started to talk about a wall, it was universally accepted on both sides that it was critical to have a wall on our southern border, and all of a sudden it's become, well, you can't have that happen because it's a win for President Trump. It's not a win for President Trump. The safety and the security of the American people is a win for America. We've let this become a political football and not become what we look at as just basic thinking. And again, this was a bipartisan effort for years to get this done. There's been money allocated. People say, well, he hasn't spent what's there yet. I said, no, but it's in the process of these things being done. I think the president makes a good point about the safety and security.
The Democrats will tell you it doesn't have to be a concrete wall or a steel wall.
Right, right. And I understand that part too. I think in some parts along the border you can't actually have a concrete or a steel wall, but I do think you have to have some type of a surveillance ability to make sure that we're watching this. I would just tell people, you know, if your first act upon entering the United States is to break a law, That's not a good way to start in any country. And I think we're a very welcoming people. Our history, by the way, as Americans, we are so welcoming to people. We need, in fact, more people right now because our birth rate is down so much. But you look at that and say, there is a way to get there. You have to be properly vetted, and we have to make sure that who's coming in is, first of all, coming in with the right intention and are healthy people. You've got to guard against things that could possibly have an effect on our American citizens.
I want to go back just a second. I want to go back to how we started this, and we have as of Friday morning, we have at least a shutdown at LaGuardia Airport for incoming airplanes. People without 800,000 workers, federal workers without paychecks, and you're getting paid, and Sally's getting paid, and I'm getting paid. You sit here and you go, that's not right. These people should be getting their money, and they are still working, and they're not getting paid. What's really going to start turning that screw is now when people are being affected by this who are not federal employees, such as they cannot get into and out of New York because of this government shutdown. The pressure is going to start to build even more, as you, I think, can imagine. So who blinks here first? How is this going to end?
I hope it's not so much of who blinks and who loses, but who wins. And in this case, I believe it's the American people. Whenever we can come to an agreement that the safety and the security of the American people is what's at issue here right now. The president has made several proposals, but again, as I said earlier, it's hard to negotiate when there's no counter. When you make an offer, but there's no counter coming back and saying, well, one of our issues is getting funding for the border wall. And in this case, Nancy Pelosi says, no, none at all. That's a non-starter for us. So I think you got to be careful as to, is it a political issue?
But hasn't he dug in just as much by saying that there has to be a wall? That they have to be funding for this, $5.7 billion for this
Yes,
wall?
but he's also put as a condition that he's also willing and moving on things that people have said before. Listen, DACA is something that we don't want to do. No, the president's already given in on those. The temporary protection, all those things are included already, in addition to monies being spent on technology, increasing the number of border agents we have, increasing the availability to take care of folks coming into the country that need to be housed. So he's put all that on the table. I think the one thing that shocks me is there's no counter at all. It's like, no, we don't care about any of that. Our issue is the wall and not giving you even $1 for the wall.
Congressman, you've been in Washington since 2011. Give us the perspective of how it feels this year on the House floor versus what you've felt even last year when President Trump was in office.
I just think now it's becoming more polarized every day. I get along very well, and sometimes I come home and people say, tell me who you've made friends with when you're in Washington, and I'll start saying names like Mike Doyle and I get along very well. John Larson and I get along very well. I said, aren't they Democrats? I say, yeah, they are. They said, you get along with these people? I said, absolutely, I get along with these people. I think when you talk to members of Congress, you would find out that there's more of a closeness than the public would see. But again, because some of the issues, the top issues, are ones that cause us to butt heads, that's what people remember. They don't remember what you agreed on. What they see and what they hear is what you don't agree on. And I would say that's probably the greatest missing link right now, is there's a lot of agreement on what we want to get done.
Well, all right, so what's, following up on your question here, what's going on behind the scenes? What are you and Mike Doyle talking about in regard to the shutdown? Or you and Connor Lamb, or whoever else it might be.
Yeah, I think what's missing here is people don't understand is that really everyday members of Congress don't get to work on these issues. It's done at the leadership level. So you have the president, you have our leader, Kevin McCarthy, our whip, Steve Scalise, you have Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, you have Steny Hoyer, who's the majority leader, and you have Senator Schumer. So when you're looking at that, there's really 5 or 6 people having this conversation, and not all the members of Congress. So 435 of us don't actually sit down and say, this is the way we think we should go. What happens is leadership takes that position. They go and they do the negotiations.
When do you get to say to your leadership, no, that's not the way I want to see it go? I'm fully behind you.
Tuesday mornings at 9 a.m.
Okay.
We have conferences that gather, and that's when the Republican conference, the Democrat conference, they convene and they have their own separate rooms, and that's when you have a chance to voice what it is that you see happening. And the other thing is looking at the committees of jurisdiction, that if it falls under their jurisdiction, that committee would have a chance to talk about it. Then they bring it back to the conference and talk about this is the direction we're going in. There's much more give and take on this, I think, than people understand. But when it comes to the actual negotiation, it's the same, I think, as if you were to look at something near and dear to me, is the United Auto Workers. The entire membership doesn't go and sit across from General Motors or Chrysler or
Right.
Ford. It's the leadership that sits across from each other that tries to forge an agreement. But again, in negotiations, it's a give and take. It's a back and forth. You put something forward and wait for a counter.
Let me go back into one of your Tuesday meetings. If you are now a Connor Lamb who has voted for two of those three proposals
Yes.
the Republicans put up.
Yes.
What is his footing now within that caucus? If the roles were reversed and you were a Republican and you were voting against your leadership, now I hesitate saying that because there was a Freedom Caucus and when John Boehner said he had enough of it, he left.
Yes.
And the second speaker after that, Mr. Ryan, also left.
Yeah, and as we know, the loss of Speaker Boehner was a huge setback for us, actually because Paul Ryan was not a guy that was looking to be Speaker of the House. He wanted to be Chairman of Ways and Means when we were in the majority. That was always his lifelong goal. So when Paul came in now, he came in as somebody who filled in for Speaker Boehner. I just know that on our side, I can't tell you what happens on the Democrat conference when they get together. I do know that on ours, it was pretty much open discussion, but we do have some factions. I've told people, and kind of jokingly, but I don't mean it to be a joke, we're getting too much like the UK, where we have little factions that on their own cannot pass legislation, on their own can stop every piece of legislation.
We have to take a break here, but I have to ask you this. From your perspective on the other side of the aisle, do you feel that Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, is feeling the same kinds of pressure that John Boehner did when you started having the Freedom Caucus and the Tea Party members who did not necessarily support the traditional line of the Republican Party? Is she finding that now, that pressure from the left side of her party?
I think she's seeing a radical left that is way beyond the pale of anything that any of us have seen before. I know when it was the Tea Party, people said, boy, they're so radical. What they really were talking about was taxation and the rising of our debt. This is a complete change in the way we look at it. It's more of a, listen, it's not even hidden anymore. They want to be socialist. And I think that's very hard for Speaker Pelosi and for anybody in leadership over there to say, you know what, this is the direction we need to go on. And as you watch it now, the left is going farther to the left than they had gone before. And I think they're separating themselves. I think the general construct of the Democrat conference, they're very divided, but I think the Speaker, she's very masterful, when you're getting enough votes to be Speaker. But in order to do that, you have to make concessions, and now they're holding her to those concessions that they had asked for, and it makes it very difficult for her.
All right, we will continue our discussion and talk about your role on the House Ways and Means Committee and the Oversight Subcommittee when the KDPG Sunday Edition continues.